Hi, my name is Nicky Jorden. Today we're here to talk about Vlad. No, not that Vlad. This Vlad. Vlad the Impaler, also known as Dracula. Now, as you can probably guess, Vlad the Impaler is pretty famous for the impaling of his enemies. But even with his harsh methods, Vlad was said to be an effective ruler. It is said in many oral histories of the region, still passed on to this day, that Vlad was a just prince who defended his homeland of Wallachia from Turkish invaders when everyone else had submitted, and returned justice and order to lawless lands. To understand him fully, we must first take a look at his past. Vlad, also known as Vlad Tepes, was born in 1431 in what is now Transylvania, but he never owned a castle or lived in Transylvania. Historians believe that he lived in Targovisti, in the Principality of Wallachia, near the border of the Ottoman Empire. No, not that Ottoman Empire. That one. But Vlad's birthplace is still unconfirmed. In 1431, King Sigismund of Hungary, later the Holy Roman Empire, inducted the elder Vlad II, Vlad III's father, into an order known as the Order of the Dragon. This organization was created to defeat the Ottomans. This gave Vlad II a new surname, Dracul, which made Vlad III the Impaler, the son of Dracula, or in ancient Romanian, Draculia. But what made Vlad III so cruel and impale people? Historians say the cause was his imprisonment during the Ottoman Empire. In 1442, Vlad II, then the ruler of Wallachia, and his sons, Vlad III and Radu, were called to a diplomatic meeting with Sultan Murad II of the Ottomans. But the meeting was a trap, and they were arrested. Vlad II was forced to leave his sons behind as hostages to ensure that he would support pro-Ottoman policies in Wallachia, where the Ottomans were pushing into Europe. Vlad III and his brother were imprisoned for around 6 years when Vlad was about 11 years old and his brother Radu only 7. Being imprisoned at a young age is bound to have negative consequences. Also, Vlad's brother Radu is very handsome, and even known later as Radu the Handsome. So you can understand that Vlad became insanely jealous of his brother and angry at the Ottomans, because his brother befriended them and got better treatment. Based on this imprisonment and psychological trauma, Vlad hated the Ottomans and became insanely cruel. When Vlad returned to Wallachia, he found his father had been murdered by the boyars, a group of noblemen. In 1456, he took back the throne for 6 years, and this is the period that he's most famous for, or infamous. Now that Vlad had his throne back, his first priority was to solidify his position and strengthen his state. But things were out of control. Vlad had to first get rid of the boyars, because they were manipulating public officials to change laws in their favor. He took revenge by making the subjected boyars build his fortress, treating them as slaves and impaling any who survived the grueling work. Vlad also had to deal with the Saxon merchants in the south of Transylvania, who were not paying custom duties and supporting rivals to the throne, including the boyars. So Vlad needed to get control of his country, and he did it mercilessly, not hesitating to impale anyone who committed a crime. In 1459, Pope Pius II began a new crusade against the Ottomans. At this point, Sultan Mehmed II sent envoys to Vlad III to ask for a late tribute and see which side Vlad was on. If Vlad paid this tribute, it would symbolize his support of the Ottomans, so he refused. He had the envoys impaled with their turbans nailed to their head. Vlad's legend as an impaler begun. Vlad then crossed the Danube in 1462, disguising himself as a Turkish Sipahi, a type of Ottoman cavalry troop. With this disguise plus his fluent Turkish, Vlad infiltrated Ottoman camps, impaling thousands of Ottomans, plus his fluent Turkish, 1,000 Ottomans. He wrote to Corvinus, leader of the Ottoman Crusade, and said, "I have killed peasants, men and women, old and young, who lived at Oblishka and Novolso, where the Danube flows into the sea, up to Rahova, which is located near Chulia. From the lower Danube up to such places as Samovet and Gigan, we killed 23,884 Turks, without counting those whom we burned in homes or the Turks whose heads were cut off by our soldiers. Thus, your highness, you must know that I have broken the peace with him." Vlad the Impaler was now creating terror in the minds of the Ottomans. Wallachia lay between the Ottoman Empire and Europe, so war was inevitable. In the winter of 1461 to 1462, badly outnumbered, Vlad employed every guerrilla tactic possible to gain the advantage, including drawing the enemy deep into your territory through strategic retreats, poisoning water supplies, burning villages, using terrain to his advantage, and even germ warfare by deliberately sending sick men into Ottoman camps. But Vlad's strongest weapon was psychological warfare. The legend of Vlad the Impaler was born. Here is an account of Greek historian Chalonkidiles of what greeted the invaders. He, the Sultan, marched on for about 5 kilometers when he saw his men impaled. The Sultan's army came across a field of stakes about 3 kilometers long and 1 kilometer wide. And there were large stakes on which they could see the impaled bodies of men, women, and children, about 20,000 of them. As they said, quite a spectacle for the Turks and the Sultan himself. The Sultan, in wonder, kept saying that he could not conquer the country of a man who could do such terrible and unnatural things, and put his power and his subjects to such use. He also used to say that this man who did such things would be worthy of more, and the other Turks, seeing so many people impaled, were scared out of their wits. There were babies clinging to their mothers on the stakes, and birds had made nests in their breasts. The Sultan retreated, but then used Vlad's brother, Radu the Handsome, to lead an attack to push all the way to Vlad's fortress of Punari. The old brother-against-brother rivalry was rekindled by the Ottomans to their advantage. Vlad, with the help of some villagers, escaped and fled in Transylvania until he reached Brasov. There, incredulously, Corvinus had him arrested with forged letters that Vlad had supported the Ottomans and fought against Christianity. Historians aren't sure why Corvinus did this. Some say that he wanted to consolidate his power as the Holy Roman Empire and end the Ottoman Crusade. Historians don't know Vlad's exact time spent in prison, yet he was free in 1475, when he planned a reconquest of Wallachia from Radu, his pro-Ottoman brother. Vlad later raised an army and recaptured the throne, but for a very short period as he was ambushed by Ottomans and killed in 1476. Now when we think of Vlad, we think he impaled people out of spite or cruelty, and this is true. Vlad committed thousands of socially unjust crimes against humanity. Romanian narratives say that Dracula so hated evil in his land that if someone stole, lied, or committed some injustice, he was not likely to stay alive. Whether he was a nobleman or a priest or a monk or a common man, and even if he had great wealth, he could not escape death if he were dishonest. Although Vlad acted cruelly by impaling his enemies, his actions saved his people and even saved Christianity. This was a chaotic and barbaric period in history, and Vlad was fighting to unite and restore order to his homeland of Wallachia, to save his people from falling into the hands of even crueler Ottomans, and to save all of Europe from being invaded. The legend of Dracula has spread all over Europe too, and violent tourist image as a bloodthirsty ruler grew. He was the inspiration for Bram Stoker's 1897 gory novel Dracula, where the author turned Vlad into a vampire, added a blood-sucking and neck-biting, and had the vampire die when they were impaled with a stake through the heart. And even today, the legend of Dracula, or Vlad the Impaler, continues. He was the inspiration for vampires? No, real vampires. Because of Vlad, the Ottomans were delayed in their conquest of Europe in constant fear, and Wallachia was united.